are these people?
Whoa, who are these people? I got this guy, Rob Durden. Oh my God, when was the last time you saw him on INN? It's been a minute.
It has.
What's up, man?
Not too much, man. Just the usual, trying to survive the slow motion collapse of my country. And yeah, yeah, not a whole lot of new stuff going on that front.
Right. So, it's been so long since we talked, and you're still really active on Twitter, and that's probably the one place, that and Facebook is where people can find you the most. That's why I've got your handle there. But it's been a long time since we talked, and I kind of wanted to get like your "I told you so" assessment. I kind of wanted to give you a chance to gloat about the election and about calling everything kind of exactly the way it was going to go down, months, even maybe a year or more in advance. So give you a chance to kind of run there. And then I really wanted to talk mostly about Luigi, and then talk about what's been happening with Zionism, Israel, the government, and Gaza, and everything that it's affected. I just want to get give you a chance to gloat and give your final assessment of the calamity that was the Harris campaign, and where you think the Democrats are, as if that they should die as a party, and what do we do now that they are dying as a party? How do we address the shit libs that believe what they believe, and how do we deal with that? There's a lot we can do there. So I'm gonna let you kind of riff and do a Rob rant, and let me know what you think on that one.
Yeah. Well, where to start? I did make a video a couple of months before the election, and it may not have been that much, maybe a couple of weeks before the election. And my prediction was out after a lot of the other sort of like boutique lefties came out with their predictions, and I was again kind of going against what they were saying. I said I think Trump is going to win um, all the swing states. And then you had people like Crystal Ball and Emma Vigland who were going out saying that Harris was going to win all of them. And then in the end, he did. He won all of them. I don't think that's that difficult to predict. I think if you're not living in one of those little shit lib bubbles, it's pretty obvious that Trump was going to win, and he was probably going to win most, if not all, of the swing states. So, I mean, I'm not really that happy about it because I don't think Trump is a good president. It's kind of depressing, but I mean, it tells you a little bit about the bubble that those people live in, and I don't know why anyone would continue to listen to a lot of those people when they're so unbelievably wrong on something they allegedly do for a living. Like, why would you go to a political analyst if they're going to be that wrong routinely? It's like Jim Cramer. Like, why are you going to go to him for financial advice when he is basically, you can do the exact opposite of what he says and make a bunch of money? So I don't want to gloat too hard. I did call it. It doesn't do the country any good, though, for Trump to be back in there. I think the Biden presidency may have actually been like the euthanizing of the Democratic Party. I think that the biggest mistake the Democrats did was installing Biden, and then they worked so hard to make sure that he never had to do anything that he campaigned on. They covered up his obvious dementia. They never held him to account in any way. And so the Biden presidency was like the lamest of duck presidencies. So it was always inevitable that Trump was going to get back in, but also like now all those people who, for instance, never said a word about the genocide when Joe Biden was doing it, if they come out now and are against the genocide when Trump does it, it's so obviously partisan, and it's so obvious that they don't actually give a shit about genocide. It's
Yep.
all about them playing for a team, that they've lost all their credibility. So, I mean, they covered up all of these horrible things that Biden did. They carried water for him and defended him for so long. So now it's very difficult for those same people to come out and attack Trump and have it be effective. So I don't think that the Democratic Party is going to recover from the Biden presidency. I think it's, especially since you see how they haven't course corrected. Like, they're still on board for, I saw the other day that they're floating to run Kamala Harris again.
I mean, look who's on the bench,
Like,
though. It's
you're right.
pathetic.
No, there isn't anybody. And that's the thing. Like, there's no one coming up the pipeline. Even if they decided to run Bernie, who's been the most popular
Oof.
Democrat running in the Democratic primaries, the primary that they did hold. Um, he can't run, and he's even if he did run right now, he doesn't have the backing that he used to. He's sort of like he's abandoned everybody that used to show up for him. So I don't think they got anybody. And you can't run Kamala Harris again. You can't run Pete Buttigieg. You can't run any of these people. They're universally hated, and they don't realize it. So I think they're just going to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. That's insane, literally. So I think that they shot themselves in the head with the Biden presidency. It's going to be almost impossible for them to recover, which isn't a bad thing. They need to go the way of the dodo. And for me, who is generally, I'm sort of out of electoral politics entirely now. I don't even consider myself much of like a third party proponent, but it opens up a niche at least for the possibility of the rise of a couple of third parties. Unfortunately, there's so much there's so much money being thrown at stacking the deck against third parties in this country. I'm not even sure it's even possible. Doesn't mean it's worth not worth trying, but I don't know if it's going to be possible. But as the Democratic Party withers and dies, there is an opening there for a strong third party to come in and possibly take a lot of the voters who would otherwise vote Democrat, but who now realize that the Democrats of 40 or 50 years ago are not the same Democrats as the Democrats today and are looking for another home.
How do we
So
get
I
that
think that
from how do we get it not being a corporatist party is the question. I mean, how do we fix Citizens United? I mean, that's
yeah,
it,
that would be it. But they're never going to do it.
right?
So never in a million years. So I'm okay with the Democratic Party withering and dying. I worry though that a lot of those people that the Democrats have now alienated are just going to go to the Republicans, which is just as bad. So I don't know. I don't pay much attention to electoral politics nowadays. I see Democrats and Republicans as basically the same team where they play two separate parts and they wear different colored ties to work, and that's just how it is. So I would like to see maybe I don't even know, the Green Party, but they're very corporate as well. You know, they're in their they've proven in the past that they're willing to listen to the rich people in the party that want them to lean towards the Democrats instead of leaning away from them and alienating themselves a little bit, but then pushing back on Democratic policy. We'll see. I just don't see much. I don't see much fight there.
The
We'll just
thing
have to
that
see how it
scares
plays out.
me, the thing that scared me is that when you add up all the independent votes, third party votes, it wasn't even enough to swing the election. So it's like, even if you took everybody that didn't vote for Trump and Harris that voted, it it wouldn't have made a difference either way. And we're losing that fight, unfortunately, somehow to the duopoly. And it's because of corporate brainwashing, and it's because of corporate media. And that's why we're doing what we do now, and why I continue to push and fight and align with other independent networks and push the independents that are trying to get it right, because we're just getting overwhelmed. And look, Israel just announced last year, at the end of last year, they're going to spend another $150 million on Hasbara to continue to further propagandize and influence the media here. And what they're realizing is that changing that narrative is working. The way that they changed the narrative, even on the college campus protests, was so frustrating for me. And it's still happening, like literally right now, as you look at what's happening with Columbia University and the grad student Mahmoud Khalil and even Grant Minor, who the member of the he was the union worker, the head of the student union. Now, he was one of the 22 students that occupied Hins Hall. They expelled him last week for that. He's a UAW member. He's a member of the union. They expelled him, and he also lost his job as the union representative the day before they were supposed to start negotiating with the administration. How convenient. He also was protesting against his school's participation in the endowment of Israel, supporting Israel, buying things that support Israel, investing in those type of funds and companies. And again, nobody wants to. Nico House actually pointed out today in a hotspot video, nobody was pointing out the fact that he was a Jewish kid that was doing that, and that Trump actually singled out that he wanted to make sure that next to having a Muslim kid kicked out of school, he wanted to have a Jewish kid kicked out of school. It was like, wow. And again, it's all of these narratives kind of coming together. And like you said, I don't think we're getting anything better under Trump. I thought that it was going to be much of the same as well, and we're getting that. What we've got actually is a more Zionist cabinet, unbelievably, than we might have even had under Harris. I don't know. And again, I'm not like saying that it would have been better under one or the other. It was nightmarish. It would have been terrible either way. And no matter what they're doing, Israel would have still agreed to a second phase and then broken the second phase, as they've now officially done. Nothing would have fundamentally changed. Wow, that sounds like Joe Biden kind of language, because let's talk about the fact that they installed Kamala Harris. Like, we didn't even get a chance to go there yet. You know, that the Democrats literally did what we accused them in 2016 of doing. They then argued and gaslit us that they didn't do, all right, which is going into the smoke-filled back room, choosing their candidate without any say from the public after the primaries at this point were already over, but before there was a convention. They could have had an open vote at a convention and let this thing kind of be decided by the base and everything else. No. That's not what they did. They wanted this pre-decided. The donors decided this. And that's why nobody voted for her. And I think that not enough people pointed to the anointment as the main reason why people rejected her in the first place. I wrote about it, and it's been the most popular article that I've ever written on my Indie Media Today. And I just could not believe that every state governor, everybody in the party, it had to have been donor driven, because they literally had to threaten everybody from the top down in order to get every single person in the party in line behind someone that they knew was a train wreck. You know, my question is, did they tell like these governors, look, man, we've seen the polling. Nobody can beat Trump. So do you want to be the guy that goes and runs into the brick wall, or you want to send her out there and make sure she never appears in American politics again? I think that's what they did in order to sell them on this, because I can't see any other reason that every other governor would step aside, even with the opportunity where they might have a chance to win. Like, these are opportunistic, craven climbers we're talking about here, right?
Yeah, even on Pod Save America, they revealed that there was internal polling that showed that Biden was going to get killed. And I think at that point they also realized that Biden was so unpopular, and particularly because of the genocide, that it didn't really matter who you put in; they were going to get shellacked.
Yep.
So they're like, "Well, why not just put Harris in there? We'll use our propaganda apparatus to boost her as much as we can." But I think deep down, a lot of them knew exactly what was going to happen. Some of the people that didn't know what was going to happen were just like Kamala Harris and her like closest pals and people in her campaign. But even a lot of them, I think that they probably had a good idea that she wasn't going to win. Now, this is where my prediction was wrong. I thought that they would read that internal polling from Biden, like see how unpopular he was, and they knew that Harris was also historically unpopular as a VP, so that I thought they would install someone like Hillary and then market it as like, a rematch against Trump. And then all the shit libs would go out there and then browbeat people and be like, okay, well, you messed up last time and we got Trump. Don't mess up this time. Let's put Hillary in there. They didn't do that. And, I don't know if it would have made any difference. Certainly, Hillary probably would have lost. But that was where I was wrong. But they knew that Kamala Harris had a very slim chance of winning. And anybody like, let's say, Gavin Newsom, he was the other one that they were floating as being, he's astute enough to look at how bad Biden was and know that if he was the one to go in there, that he would kill his future aspirations for becoming president in, 4, 8, or 12 years if he ran right now, because he is running right after Biden was in office and it was so atrocious and so unpopular with the genocide and the inflation and the Ukraine war and all that stuff. I think that most people were smart enough to know that they had no chance. Kamala Harris is just not that smart. So I don't know. And maybe she really did believe that Biden was doing a good job and she had a good chance. I don't know. It's hard to tell. But I think if they run her again, that's actually a good thing, because she'll get killed again and it only hurts the party more and shows that they're not at all receptive to normal people. So it just screws their credibility even further. I would actually like for them to run someone like that again because it just kills the party further. So, and as far as Israel, it doesn't matter who you install. Even I would wager that even if you got somebody like Jill Stein or a third party candidate in as president at this point, Israel's going to get compromise on everybody. So it really doesn't matter if they wear a red or a blue or a green tie in there. If you become the president, Israel's going to have their hooks in you one way or another, whether it's through campaign donations, compromise. That's how they operate. So Israel's going to get what they want no matter who is president, and that was obvious from the beginning. The breaking of the ceasefire, I don't you've seen 404 people were killed, at least 1,000 casualties total including injuries. 174 children were killed. So 43% of the people killed in that first bombing 2 nights ago were children. That was always going to happen because Netanyahu will not allow a ceasefire to last because as soon as the war ends, he's going to go to jail on corruption charges.
Right.
So the only way he keeps himself out of jail is by continuing the war. And he doesn't have to listen to Trump or Biden or anybody because, again, like Israel owns these people. Trump, some people will say that Trump that it has some control over Netanyahu because he's a president. I don't see things that way. I see Netanyahu as being more in control of this country than the president ever will be. And he restarted it. If I'm wrong, Trump will go out there and go, "What the hell are you doing?" And he'll be publicly against him. Methinks that's not going to happen. Oh, tornado sirens going on right now where I am.
Oh,
There we
does that mean
go.
you have to evacuate?
Nope, I'm good. I'm inside my office. I can't go anywhere, but yeah, I'll keep an eye on the. I got a window in front of me. I'll keep looking. So if suddenly everything goes black, it's because the power went out and I'm on my way to Oz. So, but yeah, no,
There's
it
no
it
place like
it doesn't really
home.
matter who's president. APAC is going to get what they want. Miriam Adelson's going to get what she wants. It's never going to change, and it doesn't matter even if we get a third party because they're so powerful. They have all the money in the world to buy off the politicians, and if they can't buy them off, they'll get compromat on them. And their mainstream media apparatus is very very powerful. Like you were saying, they still are losing the narrative because of social media, but they're doing a really good job right now scaring the shit out of everybody who has anything to say about Israel by doing these deportations and threatening jail time and stuff to activists. So eventually people are going to get too scared to even speak up about it. And even after, like, let's say the JFK files that allegedly got dropped yesterday, they're not anything new, but we did see that Israel was implicated, and the CIA, it says on like one of the front pages, like the CIA is okay with declassifying this, except for all of these things within the brackets. And then you look in the brackets down at the bottom, and it has to do with the Israeli intelligence service.
Right.
They got the CIA to cover everything up in those JFK files like that. And then you go to the Himbo shared this actually. The World Jewish Congress on their website has now added to their list of things that are anti-Semitic or anti-Semitic language. If you mention that Israel was connected to the JFK assassination, that's considered anti-Semitic. So they're just going to keep doing this where they label everybody an anti-Semite, scare the shit out of everybody, and then they don't have to win the narrative war because everyone on social media is too afraid to even mention them for fear of losing their job or getting smeared or ending up deported or jailed. And that's the whole game. And they have enough money to do it forever. So that's what scares me.
Yeah.
Dang,
And
here
and
comes a
this
tornado
is
siren.
this is the tweet that you're talking about here about how the World Jewish
Yeah.
Congress wants an amendment to the IHRA conflating the assassination of JFK with Jews and or Israel, because God forbid anybody actually had the truth that Israel and the Mossad might have also been behind the JFK assassination and involved, right? Nobody's allowed to
Yeah.
believe
And I
that.
mean, so, like, you don't have to find like the smoking gun in the JFK files to know that they were involved. You know they were involved because that's the only thing they kept redacted in this most recent drop. It was all just the CIA at the behest of Israel, keeping Israel's name out of the files. So that's like a person with a really bad poker face playing poker, and they're
Right?
trying to stay as stoic as possible. So when you see that, you're like, oh, they got something, right? They're
It's a
they're
tell.
saying that they were
Yep.
involved without saying they were involved. So But they have so much money and so much power and so much connections, and they run so much of the media and they control our politicians that it's almost like eventually they're going to win as long as they stay the course, because eventually everybody's going to be too scared to cross them,
And
even
it's not just
average Joes with
Epstein.
small social media accounts.
It's not just Epstein that, look, well, Epstein was one measure, one method of influence, but much more influential at this point is APAC. Okay. APAC, J Street, and the Israel lobby, which spent a record amount of money last election cycle in order to basically buy off 2/3 of the Congress so that they could get enough people on their side for just about any vote that they wanted to make that happen. And now they're starting to pass these draconian censorship laws, or trying to here. They've already started to pass them in the UK. They've already started to use Canadian law to have a citizen charge another citizen with harassment, not a citizen, but a journalist with harassment, so that he then had to be jailed for 5 days. I'm talking about Eve Engler, the Canadian journalist in Montreal. Okay. You've got, very famously Richard Medhurst detained and had his devices confiscated. He's now muzzled and unable to speak freely right now in the UK, and apparently now in Austria. You've got Asa Winstanley in the UK that was detained and had his devices confiscated, and he was shaken up. Sarah Wilkinson. This has been happening. And then CJ Hopkins for questioning the COVID narrative. But oh my God, look, have you seen what's been happening in Germany? All right. And they've been beating down protesters and, arresting people that are having Palestinian conferences. So, they had, what's his name, Ali Abu Nima, who got arrested in Switzerland, detained over the weekend, and then deported, even though he had a visa to be there, which is insane also. Just all the rules are out the window right now if you cross one specific thing. It's really interesting. You can't cross one narrative. You could say anything about anything else, really, even about Ukraine at this point. Really interesting.
Yep. Yep. And what this inevitably will come down to, which is the big showdown, especially here in the US, is since have a constitutional right to free speech, whereas the UK doesn't, it's going to come down to what's going to win, the Constitution and Americans who believe in the Constitution, who most Americans believe in the Constitution. I don't know if you live in America, you realize most Americans are like, yeah, hell yeah, Constitution is absolute,
Right?
versus Israeli money and power. Because right now in the UK, they don't have that same protection, which is why they got Richard Medhurst. And a lot of these other countries don't have a constitutional right to free speech, so they're going to be the ones that go down first. But
Well,
here in America,
I'm only scared
the
about one
Israeli
thing,
lobby is
though.
going to have to spend a lot of money if they want to go up against the Constitution, and it's going to be interesting because, like this is an interesting battle that's happening right now. Is that Trump's base, MAGA, generally very much pro-Constitution because they've
Right?
had their free speech rights attacked,
Mm-hmm.
especially lately during COVID, because a
January
lot of them were like
6th.
against the jab and stuff like that. So they know how it feels to be silenced. But their boy in office, Trump, is very much bought and paid for by the Israelis. So that puts Trump against his base. So we're going to have to see exactly, like, are they going to be able to exert enough pressure to protect the First Amendment in favor of Americans, when clearly Trump and most of his cabinet are just, Zionist lobby zombies that their whole purpose in life is to protect Israel and the Zionists.
I
So it's going to
mean,
be interesting to see exactly how that goes down. Um, but yeah, that's going to be a huge battle here in the future, and it's going to be very important for people in the US like you and me to still continue to raise our voices, because we do have that constitutional protection, and force their hand. Because if it comes down to, oh, so you're going to just start like arresting and beating down random social media people who are raising their voices on podcasts, that's going to look really well. Let's put it this way: it looks a lot like Germany in the 30s, and they're going to have a hard time defending that behavior. But I admit, there are times where it's intimidating, and I think that's the point. with arresting these, or not even arresting these people, but like, pulling them aside at airports and stuff, because they know that they're not going to actually arrest a lot of these people like Kit Klarenberg or Max Blumenthal or Asa Winstanley or Ali Abaniba. But they know that they're going to go home and do a podcast on it that's going to tell the rest of us who are raising our voices, yeah, there's a good chance that you're going to get hassled at minimum if you keep raising your voice.
Yeah.
So it's an intimidation tactic, and they're good at that. That's all, that's Zionists for you. Yeah, if you have anything, if you even remotely, I even had a tweet recently that did pretty well. I was like, if you even mention that they killed 400 people yesterday, you're going to get smeared. You're going to get called an anti-Semite, and you might even get jailed or deported at this point. Even just mentioning it, it's just a fact. That's where we
It's
are.
it's the thing that worries me. What they're going to use, I think, to overcome the First Amendment issue in the United States, and they've already started to do it, is to use the guise of terrorism, as they did in the UK. By the way, they've used that Section 12 in order to detain and silence Richard. Okay, what they've done in Austria is they've literally accused him of being a mouthpiece for Hamas, which they deem to be a terrorist group. So therefore, he is now a mouthpiece and supporter of terrorism. I think they're going to do the same to all of us at some point. We are all going to, at some point, be accused of supporting terrorism, whether it is domestic terrorism, someone that is in support of Palestinians here, or direct support for Palestinians and calling out Israel, as we do on a regular basis here as well. That's my big worry. And once you mention the word terrorism, a lot of the laws change. That's how they got Julian Assange. All right. That's how it went from when they deemed Julian Assange as a non-state hostile actor, and they literally basically classified him as a terrorist. It allowed them to illegally spy on him, to go in and make a deal, all kinds of deals with embassies and countries around the world to try to have him extradited, and then to even plot things like having him abducted on a London street and possibly assassinated and taken out with gunfire. All of those scenarios were written up once he was deemed to be a threat, a terroristic type of threat. And the kind of language and the kind of things that they're using legally, the way they've kind of treated Mahmoud Khalil, they put him in an ICE detention facility. First, they processed him at 26 Federal Plaza in New York City. They sent him to a facility in Elizabeth where he slept on a concrete floor. Then they sent him to Louisiana, and he is still currently sitting after a week in one of the worst ICE jails and detainment centers in the country. Why? He's got a green card. He's here legally. Now, Rubio personally and the president revoked his green card. And I didn't realize we were in a country where literally the president and the secretary of state could revoke one person's green card, but that's where we are now here too. This trampling of rights, they've been putting up these memes all over Twitter. MAGA fell for it again, giving them all these awards because, and my other worry is with Trump, he doesn't really care what his base thinks because he's done after this term. And, they have a lot of control of the narrative. They have a lot of control of the devices and of the government arms at the top. I also pointed out, I was on the Homeless Left with Matt Weinglass yesterday, pointed out how a lot of the people at the top aren't Jewish Zionists, but are Christian Zionists that are in support of Israel. And that this isn't a Jewish thing only. This is also a Christian Zionism thing, a fundamentalist Christian Zionism thing that is driving this just as much. So the religious aspect, they're coming after the Jews that are speaking out as well. It's not about that. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yep. And that, you're exactly right. That does scare me. Labeling anyone that they see as an annoyance online, or that just does basic journalism, as a terrorist. The good news on that, though, is that it's so patently absurd that the people will still see it as ridiculous. The question is whether or not they're going to be brave enough to stand up together and say, no, we're not going to allow you to just jail all of our journalists simply because they're reporting on Israel. I don't know. I mean, like you said, we've seen it with Assange, and they never were. I never really saw them bringing him back here and, putting him in Guantanamo or anything like that. I knew eventually probably we'd be able to get him out, but I mean, how much psychological damage has been done to that guy? I mean, that's what they do is they can ruin your life even if you don't end up in jail for the rest of your life. They can ruin your life. You remember Mandela was labeled a terrorist, and the U.S. saw him label him as a terrorist until like
For
2008. You know,
decades. Yep.
yeah. And then in the end, you're exonerated, but by then your whole life is ruined. So I don't know. It is a very very scary time to do commentary. But that doesn't mean that we can't do it and we shouldn't do it. I'm not the type of guy that is. I can't look myself in the mirror unless I do something about this. Yeah, I can't. I would love to just turn off social media and not pay attention to what's going on in Gaza because, of course, it breaks my heart every day. It's disgusting, but I force myself to keep looking because if everybody shuts up, then we are going to end up just like Nazi Germany. It's incumbent upon us to at least be brave here and to stick together. And every time one of us commentators or journalists gets intimidated, we all need to stick together and take care of one another. And I've always thought, they can't get all of us at once. I mean, maybe, but I mean, at some point, I'm hoping that us sticking together and increasing our numbers and trying to tell the truth and being brave will just make it impossible for them to silence everybody.
I mean, some
We'll
kind of
just have to see how it goes. They have
disobedience,
infinite
some
money and infinite power.
and Cop City. That's the other thing that worries me is they've been preparing for the unrest that they are expecting to happen within the cities, and they've now constructed these cop cities so they can train their police on how to deal with that. That also is a frightening perspective that this is what they're spending our money on. Like, they're not spending it on healthcare. We're going to get to healthcare in a minute because that's the next thing, the next topic I definitely want to cover with you. But, being a doctor and everything, you're sitting literally in a medical office, but it's so fucking scary, really, like across the board. And they're making it so that it's impossible to kind of keep up with everything. I think that they have made it so that news has been personalized to the point where no two people really have the same news feed. So they're not really on the same page. They don't really consume the same thing. They don't really believe necessarily the same truths. They may have quite a bit of alignment, but I think everybody's reality, because of the way social media has been personalized over the last 8, 10, 12 years, we literally, none of us is coming from the same base anymore. Everybody used to watch the network news and basically have the same base of knowledge. But now with Twitter and with corporate media lying to you 24/7 and, polarized news, hyper-polarized news, and then anti-corporate news, and then you've got the conspiracy theory news, and then you've got like stuff that's completely outside of politics and real news, like gaming and music and other kinds of entertainment news. People just distract themselves, and again, nobody seems to be on the same kind of basic knowledge level about what's happening in the world. And the people that are so, it's such a small collective little bubble. And I think that people overestimate the size of the people that are plugged in and paying attention, which is also really scary. That 95 or 97% of the country is not really paying close enough attention. And this is where I want to get into the next narrative and the next conversation with you, which is about our friend Luigi Mangione, which means that this stream will now be demonetized or pushed down in the algorithm. But what happened in December? I spent 45 minutes going through this. My first take is, hey, I don't think he did it. I don't think that this person actually did the shooting. And I think that he's been set up as a patsy. And I think that the police have handled things badly in several cases to the point where they can dismiss it at any point where they want to. I think that it is a psyop to the point where anytime they want the narrative to pop up, all of a sudden they trot him out. There is no specific schedule about his trial stuff. You're not hearing much from his lawyers in between stuff. You're not hearing much from anybody about anything in between anything. And the whole thing is really freaking fishy to me. On top of the fact that there are 3 or 4 other people at least, and reasons that we know that other people wanted potentially Brian Thompson no longer be on this earth. And, what really bothers me about all of this more than anything is how he has been held up as a symbol when he may not have done anything at all, number one. And a lot of the ways they're holding him up as a symbol is implicating guilt, which subconsciously is then going to convict him in people's minds as the person that did this, when A, he's innocent until proven guilty, and B, I still believe in my heart of hearts that he didn't do it in the first place. And all of this is to distract people from the narrative, because it makes it much easier if it's wrapped up in a pretty bow with, oh, this guy's on tape, he did it, we've got him, let's send him away for forever because we can't have anyone do that anymore. And we know the main reason why they made this big deal in the first place is because it scared the shit out of the elites. All right, that somebody could whack a CEO in the middle of Fifth Avenue in broad daylight, effectively in the morning on the street, and get away with it. So they had to put somebody up. That's why I think they had to have a patsy. And it took them 3 days to find their patsy. Or they had this guy already like in the wings and they knew about him and they just kind of moved him around a chessboard and they decided when to grab him. But I just wanted to hear kind of what I know you've been tweeting a lot about Luigi, and you're in healthcare and you've got a lot of feelings and thoughts about this. So I'm fascinated to kind of hear your take on all of this situation and where you think it's going to go and what you think is going to happen to him.
Well, I agree with you. I think he's innocent. He is innocent until proven guilty. I pointed this multiple times. Yeah,
Uh-oh.
there been 4 documentaries made about him. Kind of, am I losing you?
You were for a second. I think we're back. We're good.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Doing okay?
I got you.
Okay. Yeah, he's innocent until proven guilty. They've made multiple documentaries about him, sort of alluding to the fact that he was the killer. So they obviously, I think there's been a vested effort by the media conglomerates that be the elites to make it look like he's the killer, because they want him to obviously go down for this. Now, when they got him, I agree they were looking for a patsy. It backfired though, because they picked up a guy that had a backstory that people can relate to. He had spine surgery. He was in a lot of pain. He had a reason to want to commit the murder. But again, it doesn't look like him in the video. Like the video of the guy that they had in his face, the guy that actually did it, his nose is down into one of the sides. I think it's down into the left. And Luigi's got a nose that goes right down the middle. People that draw, realistic art have already come out and said, no, that's not the same guy, different eyebrows, different face. So that's neither here nor there. They went out and got a patsy, and that they assumed at this time that they were going to grab someone and put him in front of a bunch of cameras and that the people would turn on him. But they didn't. In fact, it further sort of lionized him and made him into, a symbol of the CEOs now have a reason to be scared because of Luigi, aka V for Vendetta type of guy. So it backfired.
They gave him the
on
Superman treatment. Remember, they gave him the Superman treatment, that big perp walk with all the prison guards when they moved him from Pennsylvania to New Jersey to New York. Like literally, they made him into like not the hero we want, but the hero we need. I guess that type of thing.
Yeah. And they're dumb. Like these people at the top of these media conglomerates are not that smart. They're in their own little bubble too. They assumed that would make him look like evil, but it didn't. If anything, it actually bolstered the idea that they're trying so hard to make him look like a bad guy. It makes it look like he's definitely a good guy. So it backfired badly. On whether or not I think he's going to actually get convicted, no, it's not going to go to trial. I think if anything, he'll get let off on a technicality because now these people have figured out that the last thing that they want is to put him on trial and for him to get off, or him to be found not guilty. And I think that's pretty obvious that he's going to be found. They can't beyond a reasonable doubt convict him. I don't think there's too much evidence. The facial thing in front of a jury, they show those two pictures side by side. Almost no one's going to convict him on that. Also, I think that if they were to go to the jury or to go to trial, one of the things that would come out is that the police definitely fudged his arrest really badly. Meaning, I think that they would find out that they more than likely planted evidence on him, because of course they get him at this McDonald's 2 or 3 days after the murder, and he's still carrying the murder weapon and a manifesto and a checklist that shows like what he was going to do. If you're a police officer, that's called an orgy of evidence. And when you start to walk into something like that, where you're like, there's all this evidence obviously out in the open in public that shows that he obviously did it. No one's that stupid. No, and so I think you would find out that the police probably planted some evidence on him, and they also questioned him for 17 minutes before reading him his Miranda rights. So just that alone is a violation of the Fifth Amendment. So I think he's going to get off, and I think that's probably what they want, because let's take this to its logical conclusion. He goes to trial, and both outcomes are bad. If he gets convicted, even though it's pretty obvious he didn't do it, there's riots in the streets, and he gets further lionized. Or possibly just as bad is he doesn't get convicted, and then it shows that you can get away with murder, and like that the guy that really did it is out there, and that the police are so inept that they got the wrong guy, and it just encourages further copycats. So they don't want either of those two things, and it would be super high profile, like OJ Simpson level profile for that case. They don't want either of those things. So I think in the end, what they'll do is they'll just go, oh shit, well, we're not happy with either of those two outcomes. We're just going to quietly cut this guy loose on a technicality and hope that no one notices. That seems to me like the option that they're going with right now. That's just me. And I think there's even a possibility that they knew previous to arresting Luigi that it wasn't him, but they needed their patsy, but they also didn't want to have to take this all the way to trial. So maybe they even fudged the arrest on purpose, just so they could get somebody in front of the cameras, do the perp walk, get someone in jail so that the police don't look like idiots. And they hoped that it would turn the public against the shooter, which it didn't. And then with the intention of one of these technicalities that they fudged on purpose, that he would be let off quietly months or years in the future. That would explain why they didn't. The most obvious thing in the world, especially in a case like this, is you have to read the person their Miranda rights, right? That's like the first day in police school, and that they didn't do that. Seems like that it was almost done purposely.
And
That's my take on it. I think he'll be cut loose
and
on a
then there's the thing
technicality, and
with
they'll
the
try to keep it
gun.
as quiet as possible.
Did he have the thing on him? I thought that somebody said that he had thrown it in the East, that they had something of him throwing it, the perpetrator throwing it in the East River. There was a thing with driving a city bike that had GPS on it. Like, you knew that thing was tracked. So there are so many questions. The thing with the McDonald's, did he leave a bag with money at the scene, and if he did, how could he have the backpack still on him 3 days later? Because they allegedly say that he dropped it at the sea. There are so many inconsistencies when it came to this. If it ever did make it down to trial and break down, they would. I don't think there's any way, I agree, that they could convict him. And there are too many potential narratives and ways that it could go wrong for them. So I think they left many technicalities open so that at any point they can. And remember, they can use this as a distraction at any point when something maybe is going on in Gaza, or the next time they decide to hit West Bank or something like that, and they want to kind of distract everyone. And hey, look over here. Hey, we're gonna let Luigi out because of a technicality, and hey, we're all gonna celebrate and rejoice while they drop more bombs. Like, this is kind of what they do, and it's looking the other way. It's like, okay, when you're doing that, what's going on over there? Super Bowl. How many times have they used the Super Bowl now as an excuse to drop bombs? It's like the last 3 years. It's like Israel uses the Super Bowl as the reason to murder more Palestinians.
Yep, they do that on purpose.
Yes.
They definitely do. While everyone's looking away. Also, I think that a lot of these fake file drops, like the Epstein files and the JFK files, are that same kind of thing. They do that to distract from something else that's happening that's actual news.
They
And
learned that with the Twitter
Americans, especially,
files,
are so, ooh, pretty lights over here. They get distracted so easily. The other thing about Luigi too is they said they found a print at at the scene, but he clearly was wearing gloves. Like as far as I could tell, I was looking. He looks like he's wearing gloves, and he's clearly a pro. Whoever did it, it was a pro. So you're telling me he took off his gloves to touch a car?
right?
I I
And
don't
that the
know,
thing
man.
jammed.
Also, on on the paperwork when he was taken and taken into custody, they didn't fingerprint him. Yet you found the fingerprint at the scene. It's just odd. Any good lawyer is going to ask the right questions, and of course, he's going to have access to the best lawyers in the country. So I think
You would
that
hope.
there's almost zero chance that it goes to trial because neither of the outcomes that happen in that trial, especially this high profile trial, work out for the elites. Most likely, they will let him go on a technicality, and that will be the best outcome for them.
Well, and let's talk for a bit about health insurance, about Medicaid, about the cost of healthcare and what's happening in this country, about what Trump is doing about with Doge, and allegedly how Doge is now eliminating and cutting payments to states, Medicaid payments to states. I live in New Jersey, and there was a news report my wife sent me this morning about how there's now going to be $1 billion shortfall in the state of New Jersey alone because of Medicaid. That now, if they're talking about eliminating the Obamacare exchanges, and any of the blue states that had opted into that are now no longer going to get the funding to maintain their exchanges to support the healthcare subsidies. This could potentially be a serious nightmare that I don't think enough people are focusing on right now. Maybe they think that it's going to fix itself because Trump's going to realize how this affects literally 1 in 4 Americans, Medicaid. And then on top of that, cost of healthcare in the first place. But are we just going back to 2006 pre Obamacare? Is that what we're doing here?
Yeah, I think so. If he gets it done, which it looks like he's intent on doing, Elon Musk, who is like the partial president right now, is called Social Security a Ponzi scheme. So they're coming for that too. Um, yeah, it worries me a lot. And essentially, this puts Trump again in a position where it's him versus his base, because a lot of people in MAGA are just poor people, and a lot of people need those benefits and need
Yeah.
that to get health care. So, but like you said, Trump doesn't give a shit about his base right now because he's not going to get reelected. He's done after this. So what does he owe them, right? So I don't know. It is really scary. But you're right. I think it's pre-Obamacare, which I don't know if that puts us in a better or worse spot because Obamacare is terrible as well. But we knew when going in that Trump wasn't going to help. Oh, I got another tornado warning right here. It's
Woo.
real dark right now. It's in the
Oh,
middle of the day and it's like really dark here. I'm gonna
oh
keep going.
shit.
But yeah, as someone who I'm a chiropractor and I treat only like basically poor people. I do a walk-in style clinic here. I work it by myself, but I only take I don't do any insurance here. I just charge people like cash across the board. It's like 30 or 40 bucks a pop. That is what might need to happen, is that a lot of these doctors are going to have to start treating people for less. I don't know if that's going to be possible though, because you have these doctors that go to school for 8 years. They need to repay their loans. So they don't want to do what I do. They don't want to just, let people pay out of pocket. You have to have insurance to see a lot of these people. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. But I mean, both the blue and the red team were always going to cut benefits for poor people, regardless of whether or not that's part of their base or not. They don't care. It's all about siphoning away as much money as you can from poor people in this end of empire speed run that we're doing right now and giving it to the elites. And I don't see it getting any better anytime soon, unless, of course, they. Oh, shit. It's getting worse over here. It's really dark here, guys.
Oh, bro.
Um, yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm keeping an eye
Do
out
you, do
here.
you have like
But
somewhere that you can go that's like away from a window at least?
these window I'm in an old bank, so my windows are bulletproof. Um,
Okay, well,
but I might still in a minute here, if it gets really bad, if the wind gets really bad, I might bounce. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't see any solution coming from the government on that, and it's unfortunate. Um,
Well, my other
Doge
concern here
will
is
never it will never audit the
malpractice.
Pentagon. Doge will never audit anything that benefits the elites. It will only get rid of these programs and fire these people who are working for like the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It will go after Social Security. It will go after Medicare and Medicaid before it ever touches the Pentagon budget, which is ridiculous because if you really wanted to balance the budget and start like paying off debt and like get us out of debt, the first thing you would do is audit the Pentagon for waste. But Elon Musk has a lot of those government grants that are included in that $1 trillion a year we spend on military. So of course he's not going to tell Trump to do that. We're going to cut Social Security and Medicaid instead. But that you're going to get that on both sides. Joe Biden was trying to privatize Medicare and Medicaid for the longest time. That's where Medicare Advantage came from,
Oh,
which
what
is
a
just a
nightmare.
privatized Medicare. And Trump, he's just, the Republicans at least say it out loud what they're trying to do. They don't give a shit about poor people. They don't even pretend to give a shit about poor people. That's the world we live in right now. And the way that I personally, I don't have health insurance. I just try to eat healthy and take care of myself as best as possible. If I injure myself at home, unless I break something really bad, I am basically just gonna reset it at home. Oh, here comes the rain.
Oh. But yeah, I was saying malpractice insurance and then consolidation of like medical firms. Like an individual practice is almost impossible to have these days because you have these massive hospital systems, and basically the doctors all have to be attached to one of these hospitals to be able to have access to machines, equipment, testing, and all kinds of other stuff. And between that and the malpractice insurance that you're required to hang on to in order to be able to operate, they all just end up getting swallowed up by these larger practices in the end. And what we've
Yep.
seen is, so like smaller offices like yours, it's going to be harder and harder to find because these massive systems, Robert Wood Johnson Health System is now one of the biggest in New Jersey, and Summit Health Management, and they have 35 or 40 or 50 facilities in the state of New Jersey. And how's a little doctor supposed to compete with someone that they've got a network across the state? So basically anywhere you need to go and any kind of specialist, they've got someone in their practice. Like those are the kinds of places you're going to end up at. And unfortunately, dude, yeah, no, I mean, I still see that we're going to have some kind of a socialized medicine. And now, they're talking about annexing or making Canada the 51st state. How do you think Canadians feel about giving up their healthcare potentially to come onto this
Yeah.
healthcare system? I think that that's a fascinating conversation potentially to have, even with Himbo, because as a Canadian, I'd love to get, everyone together at INN and talk about Canada 51st state or no. I think we're all basically like, hell no, for multiple reasons. And I don't think it makes economic sense. Basically, these guys want Canada's resources and population. So what
Yeah, without a doubt.
what do we do, man?
There's a lady that operates like I do, an MD in the area, and basically the trade-off that you make with someone like me is that you have to do high volume. You don't charge a lot per patient visit, but you count on basically seeing all the people that can't be seen anywhere else, that don't have it good insurance or don't have any insurance at all and can't afford the copays. Because here at where you come see me, my adjustment price is less than you would pay for a copay going elsewhere. So
Right.
what she does is that she just does cash and she puts you on a plan where it's like you can pay monthly or yearly, and it's a pretty low amount. It's not that bad. My mom is actually on it right now, and you get a certain amount of visits to go see her in over the year, and you just pay as you go, and you can get on the yearly plan if you want to.
Gotcha.
And she does all of the stuff that a normal like little urgent care facility would do, and she sees 30 patients a day or 40 patients a day, which is way more than the average doctor sees a day. And then so that's what you're going to see pop up a little bit more, is that people that are willing to sort of trade the headache of working with insurance, because working with insurance is a headache. I have done it in the past. I trade all that for simple paperwork and just having people come in and just pay as they go. And I count on seeing 20 to 30 to 40 patients a day. That's how I do it. As far as the socialized medicine goes, we can't count on getting it here. Neither one of the two main parties wants to give it to us. The only way the only way that we ever get anything like that is if the people turn up the heat so much on the current government, regardless of who's in power, that they feel like they need a release valve of some sort. Like FDR got this. The reason that we got like the New Deal was not because FDR was a good guy. It's because FDR had so much pressure on him, and people were like literally wanting to put the millionaires and billionaires' heads on pikes after the Depression. Not that there were billionaires back then, but essentially, like,
Right, the robber
100 millionaires
barons.
back then.
Hmm.
Their safety was in jeopardy. So he goes, he pulls all these captains of industry into a room and says, "Listen, if we don't give these poor people something, you guys are going to be chased out of the country. You're going to be killed, and that's the only chance we have is we have to scare the living hell out of the people that govern us. And maybe we'll get lucky where they'll go, okay, well, in exchange for you guys not killing us all, we'll give you guys Medicare for all or a public option, something like that. That's the only chance we have. We have to scare the living hell out of the elites. They're never going to give it up to us willingly."
That's why I think 3
So
years from now might actually be a window. If they actually do remove the Obamacare provisions, potentially send us back to 2016 to 2006, right now under Trump. Now the thing is the Democrats easily could come in with a mandate and offer some kind of a healthcare plan, which they won't. And that's the amazing part. We both know that there's no way they're going to do it. All right, but if the people had worked, I don't even know how we can push the donor class enough to the point where they're worried that the people are going to storm the gates because they can't afford their health care. That's literally the only thing that's going to do it. I agree.
yeah, and Luigi Mangione, even if he didn't do it, but just him becoming a symbol and the healthcare CEOs seeing the reaction online to what's his name, Jason Thompson or whatever, getting
Brian
murdered.
Thompson. Yep.
That Ryan Thompson, sorry. Yeah, they even that in and of itself helps the movement because it puts the CEOs on notice because it showed the reaction of everyone online is what should scare them because it's not like, Luigi's behind bars. They don't have to fear him himself. It's what he represents. And the fact that everybody was on board with what he did, that scares them. So I'm not condoning it. I'm not condemning it, but the reaction online definitely put the fear of God in some of these CEOs. And stuff like that is going to be the only thing that really scares the bejesus out of these people. I'm not even sure that that's enough, though. I tend to think that a lot of these real world movers, meaning the real money, the real people who own this country, the big club that George Carlin used to talk about, I think that they understand that the dollar's collapsing and that this country is going to be in shambles 5 to 10 years from now, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. There's nothing you can do. So I think they're doing an end of empire speed run where they're trying to siphon as much money as possible. And if you read a lot of these big hedge fund managers are quietly moving a lot of their American assets to China.
Offshore. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they know that the dollar's not going to be worth very much pretty soon. So I think that they're going to keep doing that until everything does collapse. And then a lot of these guys, if we're lucky, they'll just leave the country, or they'll be like, well, it's not profitable to be in America anymore. We'll go elsewhere, and then we'll be rid of them, and maybe we can build something after that. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't have much. Lately, I've had a very cynical turn
Yep.
in between the end of my last season of PFC and now, where I tend to think that like none of the things that I want to see done in this country, I'm going to live long enough to see. I just I don't see enough of a movement here. I don't see the left coalescing. If anything, we're farther away from Medicare for all than we were when Bernie was running on it in
By
2016,
far.
2015.
By far.
So
Look
it
at the
seems like we have
rallies that
less
we
momentum
had.
for those things. Why would any of the elites ever give that to us? Um, I don't see it happening.
But we had
Personally, I'm not even
rallies in
sure I'll have health
54
insurance
cities.
until I get to Medicare eligibility age.
I mean, we had rallies all across the country in 2021, and they didn't give a crap. And
Yeah, they don't give a shit.
and that movement kind of fell apart for a multitude of reasons. People still need their health care. It's not that went away. It's just that and this is something I also wanted to mention about the Assange stuff, was I think that in a way, in letting him out, it was like a release valve. It also broke up a lot of the coalition that was standing together to fight for him. Once he was out, there was kind of nothing to fight necessarily for that united everyone in quite the same way. And everyone kind of went home and did their own thing. And I don't know if that was actually part of the plan of the elites to quiet people down, because there was a lot of conversation. They did not want him to have to come here and go to trial, for example, for sure. But there was also a massive movement of people that were fighting to see him freed. And it's sad to see exactly what we've seen since. It's been almost a year, and we've gotten snippets, photographs, one little video, and an hour-long press conference, which is more than we're ever entitled to. But at the same time, after all that everybody did, you'd think that he would at least want to come out and say thank you and, and have some kind of a celebratory party with all of his supporters. Like, hey, we did this. I'm free. Like, what happened? Like, that never connected synapse-wise for me. There's always been something that smelled a little funny to all of that. And I think part of it has to do with the elites in control. I think they did it in order to shape narrative. I think they verbally, quietly said to him, you go and you disappear, and we don't ever want to hear from you again, basically, or else. And they said that it was without condition, but we all know that that really wasn't truly the case. There was certainly a condition. Part of the condition was that he had to delete certain WikiLeaks files that were already public in other places, but that's a whole other story. There's a lot of weirdness there, but again, it's about them controlling the narrative in order to be able to break up these potential coalitions that could come together to force these kinds of changes. And they give you the scraps. So they gave us what we thought we wanted was him getting out. But was it really what we wanted? Because it criminalized, publishing classified documents. Number one, he had to sign off on that. And we haven't really gotten him back, quote unquote, the way that we would have wanted to, hoped, or expected. So there's a lot of weirdness. And, Jesse Jett, the famous, wonderful, amazing Jesse Jett, has written a piece for his new album called The Win. Is this all we get before we go? And he literally is talking kind of about the feeling of watching all of this unfold and like, all right, when's the other shoe going to drop? When are they going to snatch him back up and send him back to prison? Like, this is all kind of a ruse and an illusion. And I'm still kind of waiting for that other shoe in a way to drop in a lot of cases. And I'm kind of where you are, where I think that they have successfully found a way to put a wedge between enough people that were at one point all together. There were tons of us that were together. And now we're all at each other's throats and we don't even want to talk to each other. And it's like, forget about the shit lips. I mean, we can't even have a conversation with them. They believe that Russiagate was real and that the jabs are good for you. Safe and effective, YouTube, seriously. And that YouTube doesn't censor, and Elon Musk and Donald Trump are the devil, and the Democrats are the greatest thing ever. It's like they live in a reality that doesn't exist. MAGA tends to live in the polar opposite reality, but they're at least slightly more rooted. Look, the DEI stuff that they were railing against was a real thing. The January 6th stuff, look, did 15 million votes suddenly appear and then disappear out of our electoral system for 2020? That's awful conspiracy. That's conspicuous. And you mentioned Trumpers and free speech. What about the January 6th people? That they were certainly in support of their free speech. I thought that they still rioted, and the people that went into the building certainly should have been prosecuted for trespassing at minimum. But they threw the book at them and persecuted them. All right, because they scared the shit out of the elites in Congress. God, there's so much I could talk with you about, but I know you got to go. I know you gave me an hour, and we'll have to do this again real soon. And I miss you. I love you. Tell everyone where they can find you.
5 minutes if you want.
Yeah, dude, I'll take whatever I can get with you.
I'd like to piggyback off of what you were just saying.
Please do. Go. I'll give you the final word, and then we'll cut out.
Yeah, I think if there's one fight that indie media and just Americans in general have in front of them that we have to win right now, it has to be free speech and fighting censorship.
Yeah.
That I think we can win, but it is going to be a very difficult battle. Um, as far as Assange, I tend to agree with you. I think gotten enough from him. If he wants to just go be left alone, I'm totally fine with that. He's undergone unbelievable psychological trauma, and I don't blame him if he doesn't want to try to poke the bear anymore. So, especially with what has happened to him and his family, and he's got kids, I get that. So, um, as far as the healthcare thing, I think there's another way they're trying to. I think that there is still enough people that care about healthcare and universal healthcare. Otherwise, you would not have seen so many people rise up and be excited when Luigi iced that CEO. So it's out there, but I think they fragmented it in a way that it's all over the place instead of organized. And I think what they're trying to do, and this is indicated by their Trump putting RFK in as the department ahead of the Department of HHS, Health and Human Services.
Yep.
What they're trying to do is instead of giving us universal healthcare or a public option, they're trying to put the responsibility of good health on the individual rather than putting the responsibility on the government to provide good healthcare. Meaning they let RFK in there, assuming that he's going to go and be like, okay, I'm going to fix a lot of America's health problems, not by giving universal healthcare, which he's against, by the way, piece of shit. He goes in there and he goes, well, but if we remove food dyes from Doritos, that's going to help a lot. Americans are going to get a lot healthier. But again, that puts the onus on like, okay, well, it's the problem is that Americans are eating too much junk food, and that's why they have bad health outcomes. Now that is part of the problem, but if you give everybody good health care, they can eat whatever they want. We can still maintain our liberty and we can eat whatever we want and our outcomes will be much better. So they're sort of redirecting the anger against big pharma and trying to put the responsibility on the individual to be more healthy, and that way they don't have to give anybody healthcare. We can just eat healthier, right? It's sort of like instead of us stopping what we're doing to contribute to climate change via the military industrial complex and all these big corporations, the 70 biggest corporations produce, or sorry, excuse me, the 100 biggest corporations in the world produce 71% of the ozone depleting gases or whatever. It's like, no, 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 we're not going to go through and do a government control where we tell the corporations that they need to knock off their shenanigans to help stop climate change. We're just going to make sure the individual goes to paper straws instead of plastic straws and all this bullshit. No, no, no. The best way to help people with outcomes, with good health outcomes, is to just allow them healthcare, allow them to go see a doctor when they want to. And then when they can see their doctor can say, well, it's probably not best that you be eating all this junk food. They have access to things that they wouldn't otherwise have if they can go see a health professional. And that will also help their health outcomes. But you can't just say, well, no, you're naughty. You're eating all the bad stuff. We're going to make it so you can't eat all the bad stuff, but we're not going to give you any health care to deal with any of the fallout of any, uh, what you're eating. So I tend to think that that's where they're trying to push the country is they're trying to blame bad health outcomes on the individuals, which is not the entire story. And that way they can avoid having to have the conversation of whether or not we should have universal health care. There's 33 industrialized countries on earth and 32 of them have universal health care. We're the only ones that don't. So we can do it. It would help. We should absolutely also try to get our food system cleaned up, but that's not the answer. That's not the answer. And they're distracting everybody with that shit. And they allow RFK to get in there to help push that narrative a little bit, which I'm not even sure. Have you seen him actually do anything? I haven't seen him do anything like since he's become the head of HHS. So I don't think he's even going to do that. So we'll see how it goes. The only way we're going to get anything is if we organize better and we have to scare the shit out of the elites. That's the only choice we have. That's what Chris Hedges says. That's what I agree with. Is stop worrying about red versus blue in the White House or in the Congress. They're all rich people, and we need to scare the rich people. That's the only way that we're going to get anything for poor people.
Make and wake more people up. I mean, because
Yeah.
we're losing that battle right now. and we've got to figure out ways to get to people one-on-one and actually, because when you actually have a conversation with somebody and you lay all this stuff out for them, they're like, yeah, they believe the same stuff, but it just needs to be presented to them in a way that they need to question what they're seeing and why. And I think that too many people are just too busy with their lives to really question it and go through a lot of this stuff. And they need to have somebody lay it out for them and help them out. So
Yep. If it's the last thing I do in indie media, I'm going to get people to stop arguing about red versus blue and start seeing things through class rather than partisan politics. Because poor people generally have overlying interests. They from all sides of the political spectrum, poor people generally care about the same things. They want their kids to have good education. They want to have food, healthy food. They want to have health care because that's stuff that they just don't have access to. And
yep.
whether they're MAGA or on the left and they're poor, everybody agrees on that. As soon as we start having those conversations, instead of, oh, Trump is the worst in the world. No, Biden's the worst in the world. No, they're all rich people. You're distracted. Don't let them distract you. Keep your eye on the prize, getting things for poor people, see everything through a class lens and try to talk to people that way. And we'll have some success.
Well, man, on that note, I think that's a good place to end it. What happened there? I lost you for a second. Let's go back here. I'll get you back. There we go. Oh, no, that's me. Here. Now we're going to end it. All right. Yeah, so we'll be back. I don't know, man. You're welcome back anytime. Whenever you tell me you're ready to sit down, have a conversation for an hour, we'll work out some time and we'll do this. The original plan for INN one-on-one was for you and me to do one-on-ones. And then we did a few and then it kind of fell off because both of us have lives and you had a kid and we kind of got busy and you've been doing PFC for a couple of seasons now. You've done some exclusive INN ones. We when you get to doing your next season, maybe we'll pull a couple in there too. We share that out to the INNnewsletter.com, so you got to subscribe there to get any videos that Rob does. We'll put this out there as well. And but yeah, man, original OG co-founder of INN, Rob Durden. Go follow him on Twitter at @RealRobDurden. Love you, brother, and say goodbye to everyone, and we'll see you soon.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Love you too. I'll see you around.
All right.
You can't keep giving us nothing and think we're bluffing about coming for your heads. Why play civil if you won't listen to 50,000 dead? And now we know our mission, we form a militia, make Congress a prison. No, I play civil when all these dead won't make you listen. What's more American than slaying your oppressors? What's more American than liberty or death first? God, I thought we were founded on abolishing the tyranny of those who would starve a village all to live empirically. And I regret that I have only one life to give for my cause now that I can see the cause so clearly. See, I want our leaders, regardless of party, to fear me.
Who are these people?